Hello, good afternoon, and happy day before Thanksgiving. I guess Thanksgiving Eve. Thanks everyone for joining me. Just on this last minute thought, I saw that Edwin was doing a show tonight at 8 on the Kennedy assassination, and I want to recommend that everyone please tune into that because that's the real deal there. That's a guy that has lived through it. This, but I have some stuff, interesting stuff I wanted to share, and hopefully it'll be a good warm up and advertisement for Edwin's show at 8 p.m. So please check in on him, and I put it in my community tab if anybody needs the link to it, but please check out his show. So thank you guys for joining. I see BK Skip is here. I see Arm Distance is here. Claudio, nice to see you, my Canadian friend. Tommy Stiggs, of course, is here. Tony Silo, I saw checked in. Carmela, good to see you. Paul C. Excellent. Todd Father. Thank you guys. Big Bones. Thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. And remember, I think Theendo has a show today too, so watch out for that. I don't see a thumbnail up, but just look out for that. So anyway, so today's show is specifically about the Kennedy assassination because I had some stuff. I had a little story to share about it. Obviously, I was not alive when it happened. I wasn't even a thought in my father's brain at that time, I don't think. But yeah, I definitely wasn't. But anyway, it was such a monumental event, monumentally evil and negative event that it shook the nation, and it really was pivotal in the direction that the nation would go to, even to this day. And to that point, I think people kind of overlooked that. Kennedy was, and I'm wearing my proud grandson of a World War II veteran shirt here, so you can see that. But Kennedy was of the generation that lived through the Depression, fought World War II, the greatest generation, as they were termed. And because of that, I think there was such an impact done to it. Such an impact Kennedy had. Kennedy's election was such an impact to that generation that the death was monumental also to them, to future generations. And to my point, the future generations are the biggest problem with this, is because of this man's death, the country went in a completely different direction, and it was the wrong direction, in my opinion, the negative direction, and caused so many problems to this day because of that. And I think this would be a totally different nation we live in right now if he had not been assassinated. I think we would have better racial relations, a better economy. We would be a stronger national nation, a stronger presence on the international front. I think it would have been a totally different world that we live in today. And because to me, it's such a pivotal point in history, not since the death of Abraham Lincoln, which was almost 100 years before. I mean, not 100 years. Yeah, 100 years before, right? 1860, 1960, right? 1865, 1963. So off by a couple of years. But anyway, the story I wanted to tell you on this. Oh, hi, Kelly. I want to say hello to Kelly. Stephen, how are you, my friend? Good to see you. And if I miss anybody, I hope I did not. I do not want to miss anybody. But anyway, the story I wanted to tell you, it's a very short story. There's not really much to it. But I remember my grandfather, who at the time was big into the unions. He was a union representative in New York City. And I remember him telling me about the day that this happened. And what he told me was he was in the union office, and there was a board in the boardroom. They were negotiating a contract. And he was outside of the room, and he heard the news on the radio. And as he heard the news, he immediately burst into the boardroom and all men sitting around the table and said, "The president has just been shot. The president has just been shot." Now, no one in the boardroom had heard this because when you're in union negotiations, you're usually sequestered, usually closed behind closed doors. So nobody had access to any media at the time. And he remembered, and I remember him telling me how he surprised he was because as he did that, one of his co-union negotiators said, "Frank, why are you crying?" And then he didn't even know this, and then he noticed that there were tears coming down his face as he said this, and it was such an impact to him that he was crying at the news that the president was shot. Because after all, this president, the first Catholic president, the first uh, Irish Catholic president, had such an impact to my grandfather's generation. They took credit for him getting elected. That was their achievement. They got a Catholic elected to the presidency who was going to be pro-union, who wasn't going to crush the unions, who was going to understand the plight of Catholics. And we saw as he got elected how he was the first president to really deal with civil rights and treat people with more dignity and respect based on regardless of who they were. He met with Martin Luther King. He met with various delegations of African Americans from the South. He knew the South was a problem. He committed troops to forced integration. I mean, he was a monumental figure in that time. He was a bigger than life figure. And by all means, I would never say he was perfect because I would never say any man or woman was perfect. By all means. I mean, he had his flaws. Obviously, we knew that. One of his flaws was he was a womanizer. But here's the thing about that. It wasn't publicized. It was something that was kept secret. And although the press knew about it, they still kept it secret because the idea was to support the family. The family was the cornerstone of the nation. And that's one of the problems with today, that it's not a cornerstone of the nation. That's one of our problems, in my opinion. That's one of the major problems. Hi, Maureen. Hi, Just Chilling. Good to see you, my friend. So to me, that was such that was such a surprise to me because my grandfather was he was a Democrat, a registered Democrat his whole life, but very conservative on many values, very conservative. And I think today, JFK, if he was around today and his policies were implemented today, you'd consider him a conservative. You wouldn't consider him a liberal. He was the last of the Democrats that were conservative, basically, in power like that. And here's some of the stuff that I wanted to share with you. Now, my grandfather was so touched by this incident, like I said, he was crying and didn't even know why he was crying, that he saved a lot of things from it. And I have them to this day, and I want to share it with you guys. And I have newspapers that he saved from when this actually happened. So the first newspaper I have is from something called the Newark Evening News, which does not exist anymore. And this is an original paper. President killed by an assassin, right here. The date on this paper is Friday, November 22nd. So this was that evening after the assassination took place. This went out. This is during the time when they used to have evening papers. Hi, Evan. Thank you for joining. And some of the headlines are just telling. It can't be is cried. It can't be is cried here. Attack on Kennedy shocks crowds in Newark. And this is a picture of obviously this is a picture of the car and the Secret Serviceman jumping onto the car, and then in the background you can't really see it, but it says First Lady escapes, and you see her head kind of there as she jumps from the car. And then, of course, oath taken by Johnson, and that's another story. One of the worst presidents of all time. I despise him. One of the worst presidents of all time, right here, takes the oath of office. So quite a contrast to where the country went. What else is in this paper? I mean, some of the stuff in this paper, the pictures are amazing. Right. I mean, this is delicate, so I try not to, because it's old. Here's the picture of the president right there. UN horrified. Right there. And in this picture here, this is Governor Connolly of Texas, who was also shot in the process. There's a little article here. Parents told of shooting. Senior Kennedy gets news of at home in Cape Cod. So Kennedy's father was still alive at the time. President Kennedy's mother and father were advised today that he was shot. A workman at the Kennedy family compound heard the news on the radio and rushed into the house to tell Mr. and Mrs. Kennedy. Mrs. Kennedy is 72. Her husband, Joseph, who suffered a stroke in December of 1960, is 75. The elder Kennedy was napping when informed of the shooting. His niece, Ann Gargan, 32, who was about to leave for Detroit, canceled her trip. So can you imagine that, hearing that your son was shot and killed by the workman that just happened to be there that heard it on the radio? Just earth-shattering. And here's some other things in this article. I mean, this is exactly the day that it happens, and this stuff is in the paper. Dropping his guard. This is an article that says how the president eased New York security right here. So you're already seeing hints of things about what went wrong the very day that it happens. Let me see what else I can show you on this particular paper. I mean, you can see all of the old ads in here, the old time ads. I mean, such a treasure that my grandfather kept these. I mean, he must have ran out and got this paper when it happened. The article says here, sniper in Dallas also hit Governor Connolly of Texas. Youth is held. Kennedy, 46, was killed by a bullet in the head while riding in an open car at 12:30 in the afternoon. A sniper shot President Kennedy and Governor Connolly of Texas in downtown Dallas today. U.S. Rep. Albert Thomas of Texas said both were still alive in the hospital emergency room. The Secret Service said the president remained in the emergency room and the governor was moved to the general operating room at Parkland Hospital. The president was given blood transfusions. One Secret Service man was overheard telling another that there was no need to move the president because the emergency facilities were entirely adequate in the emergency room. 2 priests were called. 2 Roman Catholic priests were summoned to the emergency room. Here's an interesting thing. After the hail of bullets, Secret Service men unlimbered automatic rifles and drew pistols, but it was too late. There was no word as to whether the gunman had escaped or been captured. Sheriff officers took a young man into custody at the scene and questioned him behind closed doors. Police reportedly found a 30 caliber 30 rifle. Minutes after the shooting, a Secret Service man was heard to say to Kennedy, he's dead, of Kennedy. However, Congressman Jim Wright of Fort Worth said both the President and Connolly were alive, although in serious condition. So, this is even before they catch Oswald. So this is like that night, and the news hadn't gotten around yet that they had caught Oswald. Now, let me show you my next paper here. Now, this one is the next day, 1963. This is the good old Newark Star Ledger. Kennedy dead. Johnson sworn in on a plane. We all know the story about that. And now he is sworn in. They get his wife, they get the first lady to be there to give him some credibility. Sniper's bullet kills president in Dallas. Now, the article here reads, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy was assassinated yesterday, and 11 hours later, police charged a 24-year-old former U.S. Marine and avid Marxist as the sniper who put a bullet into the brain of the president. Charged with the president's murder was Lee H. Oswald, a Fidel Castro sympathizer who once tried to gain Russian citizenship. Oswald has not confessed to the assassination. Police Chief Jesse Curry said in revealing the one-time defector would be brought before a grand jury next week. 46-year-old Kennedy, 35th president of the United States, was mortally wounded in the head at 1:31 p.m. Jersey time as he drove smiling and waving in an open car through a Texas crowd of 250,000. Kennedy died at Parkland Hospital at about 1 p.m., 2 p.m. It says 1 p.m. and in parentheses 2 p.m. I guess that's our time here. His wife, Jacqueline, cradled his bloody head in her arms during the frantic but futile dash to the hospital. And there's the slime bag right there. Johnson right there. Despicable person. Right there. Now, and I don't care who anybody, that's my opinion, and I don't care what anybody thinks about it either. And here is, there's your picture of Oswald right there. There's the man right there. Pro-Castroite charged as assassin. Harvey Oswald last night was charged with the murder of President Kennedy. Police Chief Jesse Curry said the 24-year-old one-time defector to Russia will be brought before a grand jury next week. And here's some other articles in here. Is it true? And then the world stood still. There were simply 60 million men, women, and children sharing the same agonizing feelings, tears, shock, anger, and disbelief. The number one man was dead. 15 minutes before the news that President Kennedy had been shot had begun to spread throughout the state, one stranger told another, and people began to gather in drugstores, restaurants, taverns, stores, lobbies, anywhere where a radio or TV set was turned on. Others lined up at the newsstands waiting for some printed verification. Until the hour of 2:39, all shared the hope that the president would not die. I mean, this just shows you, it gives you a good idea of the impact it had on the state. Then came the words no Jerseyan had ever expected to hear in his lifetime. This is a moving announcement for me, said the newsman on the radio station tuned in at the Kinney drugstore at Newark Four Corners. The president is dead. A choked chorus of oohs echoes through the store. There was stunned silence. Then a quiet flow of shocked conversation. Then, too, subsided as customers and employees who couldn't find the right words nodded numbly to each other. Outside in the street, stranger reached out to stranger. Is it true? So this is it. This is just very telling to read the actual newspapers of the accounts at the time. Here's some great pictures in here. You know, the Star Ledger did this insert, which was basically pictures of the president and his life, his wedding, him getting sworn in. There's the christening of, I guess that was, is that JFK Jr. being christened? I don't know. Various pictures of them and the family. I mean, basically, this whole newspaper is about that. And then here's the sports section. So that was that's the actual Star Ledger for the day after when everything was confirmed. Let's see what's in here. There's some more pictures in here. JFK verved one Jerseyan's hearts, waited hours for a glimpse. That's a picture of when he came to Newark. This is interesting. He came to Newark. This was a picture of him when he was in Newark. Right there. Here's a picture of him with Rodino, Congressman Rodino. This is when he was in Newark. Neil Gallagher, Representative Congressman Neil Gallagher. Hugh Adonisio, the famous mayor of Newark, who ended up going to jail for corruption. So it's tragedy stuns New Jersey congressman. Jersey bows its head, calls off many events. Soft lights and silence as president is mourned. Just really, really amazing stuff. Amazing stuff here. Churchill. This is interesting. Now, this is something I never knew. Winston Churchill, who was still alive at the time, said, "Last night, the assassination of President Kennedy is a monstrous act which has taken from us a great statesman and a wise and valiant man. The World War II leader will be 89 on November 30th. He issued a statement from the London residence after listening to television accounts of the president's death. The loss to the United States and to the world is incalculable." Sir Winston declared, those who come after Mr. Kennedy must strive the more to achieve the ideals of world peace and human happiness and dignity to which his presidency was dedicated. So that was the Star Ledger the day after. Now, let me see what else I have here. Now, I have something called the Newark Sunday News. And I don't know what that is, but if that was a different paper or if that was just another version of the Star Ledger, because it has the same print. So maybe it's the Star Ledger. Maybe it's just the Sunday Star Ledger. I don't know. November 24th. And this is the one that says, police are certain Oswald is assassin. And there you have another picture, two more pictures of the actual car and the assassination. Let's see what else we have here. And then they're even beginning. This is like 2 days later, and they're beginning to talk about politics already. Parties face reprisals. Complacency no longer prospect for Democrats in 64. So what is the Democrat Party going to do now that they don't have a president to reelect? You know, they're already talking about that. While you still have some articles, state deep in sorrow, mourning proclaimed as prayers go up for the Kennedys. Photos with gun seen as clincher. Dallas police said flatly yesterday that Lee Harvey Oswald, a pro-Castro Marxist and former U.S. Marine, assassinated President Kennedy, and they have photos to prove it. They said he had no accomplices. This case is clinched. So, I mean, like, that stuff goes to the whole theories around the assassination plots and such, and I'm not going to get into that because there's so many different angles on that. Everybody has their own theory on that, but it does seem like it's an immediately they're already dismissing it. They're not even considering that there was anyone else. They're saying that was him, and no one else is involved. Oswald so far has stubbornly denied any connection with the assassination. He refused yesterday to take a lie detector test after paraffin tests showed gunpowder traces on both his hands. So he obviously did shoot. He was shooter. Now, whether you believe there's multiple or one or all that other stuff, he definitely was a shooter. He definitely, was one of the people. Yeah, so that was the Newark Sunday News on the 24th. And then my last paper I have here is on the 25th, Monday the 25th. And this is when Oswald gets shot by Ruby. And you have the picture right on the front page of him getting shot by Ruby right there. And it says Oswald shot to death, slain by club owner. Lee Harvey Oswald, accused assassin of President Kennedy, was himself shot and killed yesterday by the operator of a striptease nightclub who broke through a heavy police guard and fired a single shot below the ex-Marine's heart. Oswald, 24, was being transferred from the city jail, and live television cameras were trained on him when he was mortally wounded. Jack Ruby, 52, portly, balding, and hot-tempered, operator of the Dallas Striptease Club, slipped through a heavy security police guard and fired a single shot from a snub-nosed revolver into Oswald's chest just below the heart. The pro-Castro, pro-communist ex-Marine slumped to the floor, fatally wounded. He was taken to Parkland Memorial Hospital. Interesting enough, that's where Kennedy was taken, where John F. Kennedy died Friday of 2 bullet wounds in the brain and throat. The shooting occurred approximately at 11:30 a.m. Oswald died at 1:07 p.m. after 12 surgeons fought to save him on an operating table just 10 feet from the room in which the nation's 35th president died. Although Oswald denied any connection with the Kennedy assassination, a few cheers broke out among witnesses in the basement of the city jail after he was shot. That's interesting. I never knew that. Oswald said absolutely nothing before or after he was shot, said Dallas Homicide Chief Will Fritz. Doctors attending the dying man said he groaned during attempts to save his life, but uttered no last words. Case closed. The case of assassination of President Kennedy now is closed, said Fritz, who Saturday told newsmen he had an ironclad case against Oswald. Ruby, who has a fringe of gray hair, was charged with Oswald's murder, but police said the death of Oswald means there will never be courtroom proof that the Marxist murdered Kennedy. So, and it goes into talk about Ruby and how he has a long criminal record. Ruby is a bachelor with long criminal record. He was a devoted backer of the slain 46-year-old president. His friends told authorities Ruby is in shirt sleeves, gave no motive for the shooting when arraigned on the murder charges before Justice of the Peace Pierce McBride and the city jail. He was known to have been in City Hall Saturday when Fritz said there was uncontestable evidence that Oswald killed Kennedy. There's a picture right here of Ruby right there in handcuffs. And then you already have the funeral, right? You have the funeral that happened immediately, basically, pretty quickly, which is the picture right there of the horse and carriage drawing the coffin. So pretty powerful stuff. There's articles. I mean, and the whole paper's filled with articles about Mrs. Kennedy walks a lonely road. Oswald's death cheered in Dallas. Inside, there's more pictures of the funeral. Newark's reaction. Oswald should have stood trial. This is Oswald's wife right there in that picture. Find Oswald's palm print on assassination rifle. Oswald killer called a very tough loner. So I just am so blessed to have these, and they're basically a family heirloom that my grandfather told me about and kept for us, and I've helped them. I've kept them ever since. And as time goes on, obviously they're paper. They're gonna wither. So I don't know. I was thinking about maybe laminating them or something to preserve them. But all in all, to this point, it's just you have a president who was beloved. You have, whether he was murdered by one or two people or which conspiracy was part of it. The fact is that his death fundamentally altered the course of the country in a negative way, in my opinion, a tremendous negative way. Vietnam War was expanded. Many more people died. The left took full advantage of this, and basically used that war to indoctrinate an entire generation against America. And we see that to this day. And that has continued and continued and continued. And I don't believe that would have happened if Kennedy was still in office. The Vietnam War would have not been escalated. It would have been de-escalated. And we would not be in the situation we are here. African Americans would have been treated better. There wouldn't have been these Jim Crow laws, et cetera, after segregation. Jim Crow laws were older than that, but I mean, like, they would the prejudice and discrimination would not have continued, because I think Kennedy was committed to stopping that. Johnson, who claimed to do it, all he did was exploit the whole race relations. He did nothing to improve it, exploited it. And as a result, this is what we're left with 60 years later. So it's such a bad thing. And to me, it's proof that evil is out in the world, regardless of what you believe, whether you believe it's Satan, whether you believe it's demons, whatever you believe it is, there's evil out there. And this is a perfect example of it. Just like when Lincoln was killed, evil killed Lincoln. Yeah, and it fundamentally changed everything for the worst. So to me, that's proof of evil. Good versus evil. It will always exist, and we need to do our best to always fight against it. But that's my take on this. It's a pretty short one, not long. But tune into Edwin's tonight at 8 p.m. This is a guy that actually lived it. You need, he was, I believe, 10 years old at the time. So, that's old enough to understand what was going on and experience it and see it. I think that's living history right there. Take advantage of it. Tune in and listen to him. All I have is documents. He actually lived it. So I defer to him and his opinion as to what it was like at the time. And I will be there. So I hope to see you there too. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this little impromptu telecast here. I hope everyone's enjoying their lunch, and I hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'll be cooking this afternoon, getting ready for tomorrow. I hope you are too, spending time with loved ones and family. I think Thindo has a 2:00 show. I don't know. I haven't seen a thumbnail, but I think he does. So tune into him. And we will see you later. As always, thank you. Press the like button if you can. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for being here and being kind to each other. If I missed anybody in the chat, Bucky, good to see you. Primo, Co-Train. I don't know if I missed anyone else, as I was on my rants there for a while. But let me see if I missed anyone real quick. Thindo is here, my friend. Evan was, I said hello to Evan before, but Evan's doing a lot. Jen Silo, good to see you. So thank you all so much for being a part of this. And I want to say God bless and happy Thanksgiving. And see you on Sunday. See you on Sunday for The Godfather. But also, remember, tune into Edwin tonight. It's 8:00. It's going to be good. Have a good day.